Welcome to Saturated, short and sweet infusions of elixir for your body, heart, mind, and soul to support you in becoming more deliciously filled with the nectar of your own essence for more everyday bliss. Because feeling more fully alive and deeply satiated is not a circumstance. It's a choice. I'm Salona Carlisle, and I'm so delighted you're here and that I get to show you how to find this new way of being in your body and your life. Sometimes the pace of your soul is hard to find, and there's a certain disposition that is required to find it once again. I'd like to share today a personal experience where I navigated this very directly recently after a couple of really full and busy days, even weeks of feeling very much on the go and not having the time and the spaciousness that I usually have with myself and for myself. I finally committed to sitting on my mat and going inwards. And right away, as I slowed down into stillness, I could feel the angst building up inside. I could feel the clench of pressure and urgency to keep moving, to keep doing, to keep producing, and to figure out what's next. And the longer I sat, the more this pressure and this urgency was building up inside to the point where I felt as though I was going to burst with anxiety and agitation and this underlying edgy, restless feeling that I just could not shake. And as someone who learned very early on, at a very young age, that my worth and value came from what I did, what I accomplished, what I produced, how I performed, and what I achieved. I know this anxiety very, very well by now. It's the familiar voice of never enough that is always pushing me to do more, to accomplish more, to become more, to strive more, work harder so that I will be further along. Whether that be something, an internal goal or an external achievement. So as I'm sitting in my practice, I know that I could just quit and give up on my original intention of sinking into the refuge of my practice, of coming back home to myself and my body. My intention of nourishment and of filling my own cup and really tuning in to receive whatever guidance may be there for me, which takes aligning with the pace of my soul that I had fallen so far out of sync with. What I also know is that sometimes what is in the deepest service of our expansion and freedom is staying inside of what can feel so incredibly hard to stay with, without leaving to get away from the discomfort. And so I ask myself often, if I could be free now, if I can be free now, why would I leave it for later? Why would I quit on myself by abandoning this moment exactly as it is? And so I decided to stay in the intensity of discomfort a little longer. I decide to keep arriving even more fully and to continue collecting all the disparate pieces of my attention that are still fragmented and wanting to stay scattered throughout my life. Wanting to tend to all that still feels unresolved in the moment. All those pieces of my attention that still want to find some sense of control. This is what we confront when we slow down enough for it to be revealed. All this movement that goes on underneath the surface that we would habitually continue to buffer, to push away, to get away from. And yet it's that very habitual escape that keeps us trapped, that holds us hostage, that hijacks our aliveness. And so as I stay longer, and then a little longer, eventually I can feel my breath becoming a little less jagged as it very reluctantly begins to deepen and settle. I can feel my body very slowly and very gradually begin to soften, to let go of the clench of resistance, to open and melt its armor against what is right here. As I'm reminded that sometimes the deepest way we can love ourselves, sometimes the most radical way we can become free, is by allowing ourselves to be exactly as we are and where we are, both in our moment and in our lives. It's by allowing ourselves to know that we are exactly where we are meant to be, experiencing exactly what it is we're meant to be experiencing, and for reasons we may not know, even though we really wish we could, because it can feel so difficult and sometimes even maddening not to know. It kind of drives the mind crazy to not know. But it's by arriving back into the truth of our wholeness, completeness, and fullness in this moment that we remember there really is no place to get to and nothing more to get that we don't already have right here, right now, and that is not already completely available right here and right now. And so this is exactly why it often takes more time and space than you think you can tolerate and afford to take, to allow for the slowing down for long enough for the wisdom of your soul to finally drop in and for you to touch a level of freedom that can only be touched when you turn towards rather than away from what is right here. Because your soul has its own timing that is not at all about comforting and catering to the mind's and the ego's preferences and agenda. And even though we wish it were different at times, ultimately, the truth is you really don't want it and wouldn't want it to be any other way. Because you are here to find the greatest freedom imaginable, especially if you're listening to this. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more and receive my free ecstatic feminine embodiment meditation, go to salonacarlisle.com. I offer a variety of ways into this work, so if you know you want to dive deeper into living more everyday bliss and becoming that woman who is wildly devoted to living her desired life now instead of later, you can also request a free consult at salonacarlisle.com/discover. And together we can find the perfect way into this work for you.